Hi, well, I'm lucky enough to just been listening into your guys' interview, Colleen and David. Really interesting, Colleen, you mentioned there's lots of innovation and regional development. Australia is right on top of that. You know, we've had the lithium batteries, had some sensational guests on the show in the other videos. Innovation in food. In your travels, are you finding there is now a trend to this? Are you finding people starting to push the barriers, Colleen?
I think we're actually, yes, at a point where we need to find innovation in our food, because we've gone actually really big in terms of agricultural production, but there seems to be a trend now to move a little bit smaller and, you know, look at those opportunities, and with smaller farms and moving into organics, which, you know, require a different set of management, you know. So I think, you know, finding innovation in food would be fantastic, not only in the value adding of food, but also the production. So from our rural or peri-urban work, we've actually looked at glasshouse and greenhouse point source type of activity, to where you don't have environmental impacts, and you can manage your water and you can recycle. So I think the combination of what David's doing, combined with, you know, the approach and moving into those closed loop systems, I think is something that would be really fantastic.
It's interesting you mentioned there, Colleen, about farming practices changing, and David, you're very close to farmers and seeing these practices. We've seen, especially in West Australia, and I know throughout Australia, farming practices change to protect the land. They've improved their soil qualities, and they've realised farming practices that 30, 40 years ago, we've come a long way, and it's totally different. Are you finding, when you're talking to farmers now, that their passion is now they're not only improving the land quality again, but now they've got a passion to go, you know what, we can start to bring this innovation to our food and improve our food quality as well?
Yeah, look, farmers are innovative by nature, and they have to be, especially in rural areas such as Western Australia, because they're on massive properties, 10,000, 20,000 acres. So you're a long way from, you know, getting help from the local tradesmen. So any time that they need to, you know, fix things or improve their production facility, they rely on themselves. So I think by nature they're quite innovative, and I think that farming practice, certainly since I was a child, it's changed no end. It's continually improving in terms of efficiency, and as you said, with the salinity issues, you know, farmers don't wait. They deal with a lot of these problems on their own.
When you're talking to farmers and you're writing to these active and these whole foods, David, what is it you're learning that's keeping this passion and keeping this drive? Because it is, every small business owner's going to know it's tough to start a business, and you're starting one in a really cutting edge market as well. Because
I know what we're doing is good.
Yeah.
It's we've got purpose. It's a good thing what we're doing. As a father now myself, and a busy father. I almost said farmer. I want to be a farmer.
Father, and your parenting is a little like farming.
Yeah, it is a little bit. But as a father myself, you know, shopping for quick snacks that I can give to my children, there's not a lot of options out there. So I know that what we're doing is a good thing. I know it's going to help. I know we're right at the forefront, and I hope we're one of many more companies, including the big guys, that do similar things with what we've started doing.
See, it sounds to me like the health benefits, the farmers and so forth are now seeing it. And Colleen, with the peri-urban, for those who haven't watched the other video, can you just give us a snapshot of what because it's very, very exciting, peri-urban.
Peri-urban is actually that interface between the urban landscape and the rural landscape. And so it's quite a mixed use area. So you've got a lot of subdivision that takes place. So you've got large tracts of land that are subdivided into smaller tracts, and they're often called lifestyle blocks. So you've got 2 acres, 5 acres, 10 acres. And so people are moving onto these places, and they're wanting to take up some agricultural activity, but often they're not to the scale that's required, to meet the bigger markets, or sometimes even the export. So, there's a lot of things that in that peri-urban space that can be done. Direct marketing is one, through farmers markets, but also cooperative, moving into the provision of foodstuffs cooperatively, and purchasing things cooperatively as well.
Do you know, can I just interject? In Japan, have you travelled much in Japan?
Actually, I've only been to the airport in Japan, so no, haven't traveled in Japan.
Well, if you leave the airport,
Yeah.
a lot of the genuine farms are operating off less than 2 acres.
Yes.
So perhaps...
and they're going vertical as well.
They've
got a number of farms that are all completely enclosed.
Yeah.
Recycled water, they've got specialized lighting, in order to meet the demand.
So I wonder whether the peri-urban farmers, or this program that you're a part of, whether you could learn from the Japanese.
Definitely. We've actually incorporated some of the technology that they've got, and we're trying to bring that to the peri-urban space. And that's all that glass house, greenhouse, and what I call point source. So you've got you can recycle your water. You can grow on very small areas, but you actually grow vertically rather than across a wide space.
It's fascinating, the changes. What I was interested in when you were saying you don't use preservatives and you use a drying method, so you don't have to. I suppose we hear a lot of chemicals, and just so people watching who may not be as au fait and as qualified as yourself, you say you're drying it with liquid nitrogen. So I suppose a question may pop in people's mind: does that leave any traces that we should be aware of?
Of liquid nitrogen?
Yeah,
no.
What does it do?
Look, it's effectively NASA technology. It was in, as I understand it, the viewers. Space. Yeah, there's
so it's back to space.
Back to space again. Sorry. I hope I'm not getting this wrong, but my understanding is that NASA either incorporated some of this technology, or certainly may have even invented it for astronauts. So it was a way of healthily preserving foods for astronauts in space to rehydrate and feed themselves. So look, it's 60, 70-year-old technology that we're using, but we're using it in a way that can produce and preserve this wonderful Australian farm produce.
I'm glad you answered that, because I'd heard the same thing, that it was space, and probably through Colleen and some of the people she's talked to. One thing you said, you call it active whole foods.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Okay,
so there's two things there. Whole food is effectively minimally handled food. So what we try and do, for instance, is find this fantastic yogurt product and fantastic organic fruit product, and we literally churn it, freeze dry it, and that's it. So we're trying to cut back the number of steps. So unprocessed is effectively what whole food is. Active is where when you ingest the food, an active outcome occurs, an active chemical process almost occurs. So a bit like when you swallow a tablet or take a medicine, there's activity with that medicine. So if really we're merging two worlds, the sort of the medical world and the farming world. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It certainly does. You mentioned something, and we've talked with people on foods, and especially peri-urban, and the things going on there with farmers. Brain development in our children. You mentioned omega-3, 6, and 9. And I think you're saying this is very specific to the yogurt product. Did I hear that correctly when you were talking?
Yeah, it is. It is. So we know within the medical fraternity there's some quite sound clinical evidence now that if we incorporate and dose omega-3, 6, and 9 fatty acids in children's diet, and quite high dose, we know that there are positive outcomes in terms of brain development, mood, concentration. So we've already been using a lot of these types of products for many, many years, but primarily as a medicine, not really so much in food.
Okay. As a business, Colleen, you see a lot of businesses, and Regional Development Australia is very supportive of innovation. Where do you see innovation food in fitting into specifically Western Australia, where we are? Do you think we can be a central hub to promote and support this?
I think we can. I think Western Australia, and I think this has been proven through the lithium discussions, is that we're really good at primary processing and taking the primary outcomes and exporting them, and then we import them back as other products, right? And what we lack is the capacity to value add and actually create higher value products that then we export, but we don't export them back as another product. So, and I think in the food space, this is going to happen. We sit on the doorstep of the largest population in the world, and that population is moving more and more into the middle class, and they're going to have more and more demands in terms of having convenience foods and having a whole range of things. But then on top of that, there's going to be a demand around nutrition and quality. So I think what you're doing is actually fitting well into that space. And the more that we can value add our primary product here in Western Australia and export that, I think that's we're going to find the future of our jobs.
Is this why RDA is passionate about like the outer harbour development for exports that allows companies like David's who grow and are ready to export, it gives them a facility to do that? Because at the moment we're a bit congested in Fremantle's a great port, but we do need to get that on the main trade route for export.
Yes, these activities such as what David's undertaking and I think there's others out there that are growing. The lithium, of course, being one of them. Yes, we do need to have considerations for the new port in terms of how that port is going to meet the needs of the economic activity for the state in delivering it to overseas markets. So, the more that we look at containerized shipping, down at Kwinana and transition out of Fremantle, that will allow Fremantle to open up for tourism opportunities.
Yeah.
So.
And I know with the outer harbour, because we're on the main shipping route there, and you mentioned China, David, for your product. Is your product going to have the shelf life to be put on a ship and actually go to China? Will it last that long?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's one of the key things that we've been working on the last 2 years is how can we create a whole food, a natural product, an active product, but do it in a way that actually does give good expiry dates. So we're already at that point. We've got great expiry dates.
And you mentioned China, and we've gone through this drama of the baby food formula because ours is such a high quality, it's been grabbed off the shelves and gone overseas. Do you find that those Asian markets already have a perception that the food quality that comes out of Western Australia is of that high quality that does have an intrinsic value to them, makes it a high demand?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the word that I think of is fortunate. We're very fortunate in Australia that we have that reputation, but whilst we do have that fortune, we've got to be very, very careful because it only takes one incident and we can lose that. So I think it's every stakeholder within the industry at a supplying level, at a farming level, at a retail level, we all have a responsibility to understand the fortunate position that we're in and do everything we can to maintain it and build on that because we're in a great spot. So as business leaders, we've got a great responsibility to really do everything we can to maintain that.
Is that why with your company you're almost taking baby steps? You're going to go to the schools first, which is a good target audience, but it allows you to, and you said you're working towards ISO. Is this so you can start getting those traceabilities into place before you go overseas, so you're ironing out any mistakes before they happen? Yeah,
more or less. I think also just in simple terms, we're a small business, we're a family business. So we need to make sure that we can walk before we can run. We have massive aspirations. We want to export. We want to take on the world. we're very ambitious, but we want to make sure we get it right. And if we can get it right in schools, then Woolworths, Coles, or all these other bigger brands, they'll look after themselves. But we think the strategy we have is the right one.
It's interesting you're saying like your steps. I know you mentioned in your interview you picked 9 products. Colleen, from your experience your vast experience in business and dealing with business leaders, do you think the 9 products or having a several product approach to launch is better than a single product approach to launch?
I think what Dave was saying is correct about getting it right, and if it's on one product, making sure to get that one product right, or just a handful of products. You don't want to spread yourself too thin. I think yes, it's about getting those products absolutely right, and getting it to what the market is looking for is really important.
Is that the exercise you went through, David, trying to find that? Because you said about you've got so many products you can do.
Hundreds
of them. So you go from hundreds down to 9. Was it a bit of an exercise to narrow it down to the 9 you felt were the best ones to launch with?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I was talking about before, we've already performed 3 sample runs, and within the sample run there were other derivations and other flavour profiles, and we learnt from some initial market research, literally hitting the streets and feeding it to kids and waiting for the feedback and doing questionnaires. But we feel as though we've got it right, and also launching it into schools this will be an ongoing learning process, an ongoing refining, and we're going to continue to work on every step of the process: sourcing, manufacturing, marketing, packaging. It's going to be an organic, live process.
Yeah, I must admit, on a personal note, I love the name From Our Farm. And talking to Colleen and the business people you've had in, the farm is really coming to the top, isn't it? Really coming to the fore with peri-urban farming, with the markets, farmers and so forth. It is really becoming a very, very topical issue these days.
I think that's reflected even across the Coles and Woolies range, because they now in their advertising show their farmers, so they're trying to make that connection between the consumer and the producer, and so I think people are wanting that more and more, and I think that is probably as we go global, being able to demonstrate that is going to be really important.
David, just as closing, someone looking at food products now and they're trying to get the best for children, why is the whole food, because you work in pharmacy, you work in all this industry, what would be the number one benefit you would see for a family in making the shift into getting better quality foods?
I think total health. I think we don't all take tablets, we don't all take medicines, but we all eat. So we need to eat wisely. And from a young age, it's very, very important that we educate our next generation to eat wisely, because there's ramifications later on in life. We all know about the obesity issue. I think what you touched on there with Whole Foods really at its core is about not adding waste, sugars, lactose, fillers, and preserving all the goodness of great raw product. So really for mine, it's just about total health.
Fantastic. David, Colleen, it was great I know you're in a hurry, but I couldn't resist but jumping on your show and ask some questions. It's been absolutely fantastic. David, your website is www.FromOurFarm.com, and Colleen, you want people to subscribe?
Yes, we want you to subscribe to our channel, because we have a lot more interesting people that we're going to bring on, a lot more interesting conversations that we're going to have about what Western Australia has to offer. Thank you.